appreciate it. All right, so I'm going to ask a couple of easy questions first. Basically, what is IoT and what is Industry 4.0?
Okay. And just to start off, Bob, thank you very much for having me here. You know, I moved to Cleveland 9 years ago, and to take the job at Eaton. And part of the philosophy I have is that if you're going to live in a community, you have to actually be part of the community. So with that, it really is a pleasure to be here. Thank you. IoT, so stands for Internet of Things. And how many of you have ever gone shopping to buy IoT devices? People are a big IoT sale somewhere, everything. It's really an interesting thing. Internet of Things stands for physical devices that are connected up to the internet. And today there's over, by any estimate, 30 billion connected devices out there in the industry today. But we never really think about it in that sense. We look at, I'm going to go and buy a smartphone, I'm going to use a GPS, I'm going to use a Fitbit. And while we may think about Internet of Things as a topic, it really is something that's just embedded into basically everything that we touch, feel, and use today. It's essentially a part of how we live. And you bring that back to manufacturing and Industry 4.0, and I'll tell you that's probably one of the most misunderstood terms that's out there in the world today. Even inside of Eaton, we're a manufacturing company, and you would say, what is Industry 4.0? You ask 100 people, you're going to get 100 different answers on that. And if you look at the evolution of manufacturing, there's basically been 4 different stages. The first stage was when the steam engine was actually done, and that was the first way to get mechanical propulsion to go and help with the manufacturing of products. The second was around electrification, and that introduced the assembly line, again, using different types of power to go and replace a lot of what would be manual labor. The third was around robotics and automation. And now the last piece, 4.0, is really about how do you apply digital technology, and that could be connected devices, sensors, things, and be able to harness information to make your manufacturing process more productive. So it sounds complex. It sounds like there's a lot that has to go into it, but it really doesn't. It simply says, if you're in manufacturing, you're continually trying to improve your operations. And you heard the concept of lean, you hear the concept of continuous improvement. And I would say that, really, it's a matter of Industry 4.0 is how do you apply digital technology to make your manufacturing processes better?
Correct. Yeah. Just a side note, a few days ago, Mike and I had a pre-meeting conversation, and just to give you an idea on his commitment to the community, his voice was hoarse because he was at a Cavs game. So, just in case you weren't sure, Michael's definitely dedicated to the region. So, Mike, you said that Industry 4.0 is just the next step in continuous improvement. Can you walk us through what that actually looks like on the factory floor?
Sure. You know what? It doesn't have to be very complicated, to be honest. If you're going around and doing a Gemba walk and checking out your operations and you have a physical notepad, okay? Just think about replacing it with a spreadsheet on an iPad. If you have, a number of key metrics that are up on a wall and they're in paper, how do you go and create visual dashboards that are automatically updated? Training, if you have a paper manual that's out there on how to train new people to do a assembly process, think about replacing it with a HoloLens or something that can visually show the instructions, especially if it's very complex. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to look at, a lot of the commercials you'll see with IBM where everything's digital and people are touching and everything. It doesn't have to be that way. It really is a matter of what's the biggest pain point that you have in achieving productivity in your operations, and are there digital tools that you can go and apply to solve the problem? And you just continually iterate and iterate and iterate on that. And eventually you might get to the point where you have autonomous machines that are going throughout a building where you have GPS tracks on key materials and you know where they are inside a factory plant. But the key thing is just start simple. Is there a way, what's my biggest problem, and what's a digital means or technique that I can apply to go and solve it, so that I have the information captured and I can use that information later on to help me solve other problems.
Yeah, you know, we've had conversations with companies over the years that are trying to figure out how to start down that road, and you said keep it simple. And that's really the key, from what I've seen, and that is that, you know, there's a plethora of opportunities out there in terms of what you do in your manufacturing facility, but start with something simple. Take one machine, add a sensor to it, start gathering data from it, and you're on your way, you know, and then start to learn from what you can, or find out what you can learn from that very basic information. Don't try to take on all of it all at once. Take your time with it.
You know, it's interesting. I've worked with, if you look at where, quote, Industry 4.0 really got started, it got started in Germany, and a lot of the automotive companies that are out there. But even if you go out and visit them today, you'll see that there's still a lot of manual processes. Nobody has been able to go and invest billions of dollars to go and create something that's totally automated. It just isn't economically feasible. It's not going to give you the right results. Right.
So IoT and innovation cross over, and you're in charge of a large innovation, workforce innovation company. Can you give us some sense of how do you scale? How do you incorporate that innovative mentality throughout a large organization?
Wow, there's a lot there. It's really hard. It's really hard. And you know, there's a couple things that misconceptions with large companies. Everyone's like, well, you have the financial resources, you have the capabilities, you have the ability to go and invest. And to a large sense, that's true. But there's also a lot of distractions that occur that are out there. If you're a large company and you're trying to start something that's in a new space or an adjacency to where you are today, you know, the revenue on that is so small. The investment required is so big. And it's like, well, okay, are we really going to see this through, when at the end of the day, people just really care about kind of the bottom line numbers that are going to go and drive the business. But if you get beside all of that, you have to also realize that a large corporation such as Eaton is comprised of individual facilities that are in towns like Cleveland, that are in Pittsburgh, that are in Roanoke, Virginia, all over. And each of those is equivalent to any small business or medium-sized business on their own that exists in Cleveland or Northeast Ohio or others. And the key to scaling innovation is identifying the problem that you're trying to solve, getting a set of pilots in place that you could go and prove out what the value proposition is, and then you could look at, once you get the metrics, the investment of the large corporations to say, now I'm going to run it in other parts of our country or other parts of the world. That's where a big company does have an advantage, is once you get a success in a place, now you can say, I see the return, I see the investment, and now I can scale it across many different places.
Kind of back to the start simple perspective, right?
And you have to have a problem. You have to be able to identify that there's a real problem out there and say, ultimately everything comes down to a financial justification. Mm-hmm. If I invest X, I'm going to get Y in return, and it's going to allow me to be more competitive in the marketplace.
So another question with respect to this region, and when I by the region, I mean kind of the Middle East, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. This whole region was kind of part of the founding of the Industrial Revolution. I still think personally that creates a lot of impetus and value and excitement to utilize that base. Why do you feel that this region is really ready for what we're proposing here with IoT?
I'm going to go back to a word that Mike used when he opened up, and it was the word sandbox. And if you're going to innovate, if you're going to have solutions, you have to have a test bed, you have to have a platform where you can go and test these solutions out. And one of the things I've learned since I've moved to the region is that in Northeast Ohio, there's over 7,700 manufacturing facilities in this region. We are one of the largest, if not the most dense area for manufacturing anywhere in the United States. Matter of fact, almost anywhere in the world. And you wouldn't really know it because we're not really specific to any one market segment. It's not like it's all aerospace or it's all automotive like Detroit. I mean, we are very blessed that we're agnostic to many different industries, and we serve everything from healthcare to automotive to aerospace and so forth. And most of the businesses are small to medium sized businesses. So if you look at that, everybody's searching for a way to go and drive productivity to be more competitive. And it yields itself to companies that want to build products to go in and say, look, I have a way to help you solve this on your manufacturing floor. I have a way to make this make you more productive in your logistics. And you have to have that ability to develop new solutions, but you have to have that sandbox to go and test it out in and experiment if you're going to go anywhere. And to me, that's what makes Northeast Ohio really, really special and really unique. I think the biggest challenge we have is just the awareness of what kind of companies do we have out there, the ability to raise your hand and say that I want some help or I want to go apply a solution, and then the innovators that are out there to come up and say, I have a way to help you solve the problem.
Yeah, I feel like people don't really realize what a manufacturing hub we really are. And with all the macroeconomic changes as well taken into consideration, organizations throughout the country can really benefit from coming here and starting up shop. And I think it's partly a communication problem. But I mean, you know, in our world, my goodness, it just amazes me how many different companies make things here in the Midwest and in Iowa in particular. Just absolutely astounding. I mean, when you start to think about all the organizations, Eaton, ABB's here, Nordson's here, Energizer's here, Vitamix is here, Genie Doors here, I could go on and on. It's just this enormous list of manufacturers that make stuff. And so we know how to make stuff, you know, and we have the engineer, look, we've got here at CSU, we've got the engineering talent that, you know, through CSU, Akron, Case, Carnegie Mellon.
And you know, we are blessed. We have a lot of universities here. We have a lot of talent that could come into the industry. And if you just open our radius a little bit and just say, we're going to go on a 2-hour drive, all of a sudden you bring in all the universities inside of Pittsburgh, you bring in Columbus, and now you have a real influx of talent that you can bring into the region.
And we need to encourage young engineers, young people, and we need to come here to Cleveland. I think it's, as we all know, a well-kept secret, and we need to eliminate the secret.
I'll tell you, before I moved to Cleveland, I've been fortunate to travel in a lot of different places. Cleveland was one of the areas I had never visited, but we fell in love with this place. It is tremendous in terms of what it offers from a cultural point of view, from a sports point of view, economic, etc. It's a great place to live.
Yeah, cost of living. When I was young, I lived in Boston. No disrespect to Boston. Love Boston. But I lived in a basement apartment. I shared it with another engineer. I was paying $700 a month in 1984. So you can imagine when I came here, the culture shock of the cost of living, and actually I was paid handsomely. So, you know, folks just need to find out about what a wonderful place this is to live, to raise a family, to start and maintain a career, to improve their educational prowess. So,
And my voice has recovered.
I see, completely, yeah. So, I think that's what I've got. Anything you wanna say to kind of close things out, Mike?
I would really embrace the opportunity that's here inside of the region and inside of the manufacturing base that we have. If you're in the manufacturing industry, don't be scared off by new technology. There is one thing I do want to add in, and that's the concept of artificial intelligence and AI. And I went to a conference last year, sponsored by McKinsey Corporation, and it was a number of people that were in R&D positions very similar to myself, and it was kind of like, hey, what's going on internally and what's happening inside of the industry, the state of artificial intelligence and adoption in R&D, and it was amazing. And I'll say, if you're not using and you're not figuring out how to use artificial intelligence, either in your personal productivity, inside of your organizations, inside of your facility, the separation between the haves and the have-nots are going to happen at an accelerated pace that we've never experienced before. You simply, if you're not adopting it, you will not be able to be productive in the future. It's really, really incredible. And the only way artificial intelligence works is if you have a large amount of data that's tied back to everything on how you run your plant, how you run your operations, how you run your business. And that synthesis, while yes, it's still in its infancy, you have to be able to explore with it and look at how to use it. It's getting cheaper all the time. There's a number of ways that you can go and do it. But I would just encourage everybody, whether it be in how you work personally, how you work, professionally, the products that you develop, the businesses that you run, really take a look at AI and how it can help you be more productive. It's really going to be an accelerant into the way that work is done in the future.
And it's moving so fast, and it's hard to keep up. And you mentioned data, which ties directly with an IoT. I mean, we're basically talking about machines. Machines emanate data. That data then needs to be captured and then processed through AI. So Mike, how are we doing on time? Good? Round of applause for our guests, please.